that the other clubs are getting on, helping football inflation to spiral, that Essendon was going to keep costs down and still have good players?
Well, that's our intention, and I'm sure we're going to be successful.
Now, does that mean that if a player is up in the $100,000 bracket that you aren't interested?
Not so much in the $100,000 mark, but some of the figures that are being bandied around and in fact are being by other clubs, Drew. We're not going to put the pressure on our people to generate funds that we recognise are impossible. And we're going to be a successful club, despite the fact we may be labelled as a conservative club, but that won't stop us from being successful.
Greg, just to make that clear, you're talking transfer fees.
Transfer.
Right? There's no players getting 100, are there?
Oh, no, nothing at our club. But we don't intend to talk the numbers that have been talked and are being paid for local and interstate players.
You missed some good players.
That may be so, Doug, but we've got a lot of other players that we can select. Are we going to have a successful year? Despite the result of last Sunday, we'll have a successful year this year, and the fact that we're not going to pay this money won't stop us from being premiers.
I suggest, Greg, that people who are down the ladder, who are 8th, 9th, 10th, etc., have got no other alternative.
Well,
they'll never get up otherwise. You can't just hope that you're going to find Lee Matthews and Tim Watson in your zone like you had that Dimbula. That was a fluke, wasn't it?
Well, that may be so, but I think they'll go out of existence before they become premiers if they start spending the amount of money that
You can never see Collingwood going out of existence, and they've been the Bank of England this year, haven't they?
Well, it remains to be seen. At our club, we believe that they may well have gone beyond the point of reality, and we certainly won't be doing it.
That's a pretty big statement to make about Collingwood. Strong club, obviously plenty of resources.
Well, you say plenty of resources, Don. Melbourne, Victoria can only support X number of dollars. And if these dollars are going to be taken by one club, where are the other dollars going to come for the other clubs? They're not there to be got these days, particularly in the times that we live in today. And I don't see how all these clubs who are hocking themselves to the hilt, in our belief, can be successful and carry on. It's too dangerous, and we don't intend to be in there at Essendon.
They've done a miraculous job this year. We're giving too much Collingwood probably, but they've raised 2.5 million already. And last year, I think, this is in promotions and things like that, Greg, it's a massive amount of money.
Well, it is, Doug, but if you look at it, some of the funds that they've raised are on the long-term basis. Some of them are 6 years. They've sold some seats, etc., over a 6-year period, money up front. What are they going to do next year?
I think it is their intention next year to prove what you're saying, is to come back to the fold. They feel that they were a long way down. The only way to get up was to pick a cup, to get some in, which the same with my old club. Melbourne had no way of getting up the ladder unless they could get 1 or 2 top senior players.
That's a terrible double standard, though, isn't it, to say this is the wrong thing to do, but we're going to do it for 1 year, to hell with it, then we'll come back to the fold.
No one said it's the wrong thing to do. They haven't said that's the wrong thing to do.
Well, you just said they're talking about coming back to the fold next year,
exactly.
But they're going to allow themselves 1 year of extravagance.
Their 1 year when they were down, Tim, and don't forget, I made this point I think last week, Collingwood last year had the worst year in the history of the Collingwood Football Club, and Collingwood don't take that lightly, and for that they're to be admired. No one said it's the worst thing to do. It's not the wrong thing to do. It's part of the game of league football. If you've got money, you can spend it the way you wish to.
But I think there's a general feeling it's setting league football on the wrong course.
What they're going to do is, because of what Greg said, even Collingwood will run out of money. Next year, they feel they'll taper back. But Collingwood have tried to do what other top clubs like Greg's talked about have tried to do, to make sure they keep the status quo of the players. It's the transfer fee that's the huge money that's going around. And that is huge. Collingwood are over $1 million easily, I think, in transfer fees.
Yeah, but surely, when you consider the high transfer fees, it must infect the minds of the players to think if you can use that sort of money, the club can generate such funds to give them a false sense of security to demand higher payment for themselves.
I don't think so. I think high transfer fees are good, Greg, because A, it's a deterrent, and B, the flow of good players, and I stress really good players, sadly, is going from the bottom teams to the top. And this will always be, because in the bottom team, Gary Dempsey and the Barry Rounds and those from Footscray have had a perfectly legitimate case to the appeals board, if it was in existence, to say, look, I've served my time, 10 or 11 years down here, I want to change, and they're sympathetic to it. So the good players are going to go from bottom to top. And I think it's a very good thing if it's very expensive and they get a lot of money for the players they lose.
You said a deterrent. It doesn't seem to be working.
It will.
Deterrent.
Well, it will work. I have already said it in another way. With Collingwood spending so much this year, they have felt that they can't do that again next year, and Greg's backed it up.
Greg, could I ask you a question about yesterday's appeals board decision? What did you feel disappointed about the fact that not the appeals board decision, but the complaints committee overturning the effect of the Cloak decision?
Yes, I'm surprised. It's been mentioned from VFL sources that they were concerned about the high transfer fees, and surely we should get home base in order first. And now we're talking somewhere in the vicinity of $200,000, and I'm disappointed because I think we should have perhaps held ourselves intact in Victoria. And even though it may well have been a little unequal, if a club wants to spend a lot of money interstate, that's no real reason that we should use that as a gauge. If that was the reason, and I certainly wasn't privy to the discussion, I don't believe that we should have allowed the Victorian transfer fee to get anywhere near $200,000.
But it wasn't an interstate thing, Greg. After all, Graham Teasdale last year cost 180-odd thousand, so that's what Cloak was up to that. Do you feel that Collingwood were justifying saying they felt the president of the VFL should not be on the complaints committee?
Haven't really thought about that. Surely the president should be unbiased enough to use a judgment that's second to none.
Yeah, I don't think he should be there. I think it should be that its justice has got to be seen to be done. I'm sure he's unbiased.
What you're really saying, Doug, that because Teasdale was 185,000, that we can't correct a mistake.
No, I'm saying that's the market price. And if you look at all these transfer fees, Templeton was around the same. That is about the market price of a fellow like Cloak.
Yes, but if it is a market price and we recognise it as being wrong, and I think we do, we certainly do at Essendon.
Yeah, well, I don't. As you know, I think it's a good thing, high transfer fees for top players.
Yeah, well, we don't, and that's what we'll be sticking to, but we'll still be in there.
Greg, can I ask you a question? Talking about cultivating your younger players, the Essendon District League has always been a strong source of players in the past. What is the club doing to foster those junior leagues?
We have a series of skills coaching, and we do that for 12 months of the year. And we have former players, the likes of Russell Blue and Jeff Gosper and David Collins, at the Essendon District League and the Eastern District League. We have a juniors under 14, under 15, under 16. Once a week they are taught the skills 12 months of the year, and we have something like 20 people in each squad in each district. So we have 40 boys between Essendon and Eastern, under 14, 20 under 15 and under 16, and hopefully the under 14s will carry on to the under 15s. So it's a medium to long-term plan, but we believe that's where we ought to be. The Essendon District League, before we had the Eastern District League, was our best recruit source. We lapsed, we seem to have drifted apart, but we're pulling it back together, and I have little or no doubt that we'll be getting players from the Essendon District League and the Eastern and the likes of the Wimmera and the Peninsula very shortly.
When you mentioned the Wimmera, Greg, you'd be pretty happy with some of the results you've had from there of late, especially with young Wayne Bettison.
Of course, but they haven't cost us also. We've made a valuable contribution, I believe, to the Wimmera, but it hasn't cost anything like the numbers that we're talking about. And one can only hope that never happens. So long as we make our contribution, and I'm sure we are, we have to put something back, and I believe we are, and everyone's happy, but we're not talking big numbers.
Well, Greg, what do you think about the Fashuni case? That really is the sensational one, I think, because here's a player who's really just a babe in the woods.
Well, it's a little different, of course, because of the circumstances of South Melbourne transferring to Sydney. I've mixed feelings on that one, but if it was just from club to club, I'd feel very strongly about it, that he shouldn't be granted a clearance. I've got mixed feelings because of he's genuinely seems as though he wants to stay in Melbourne.
Yep.
And if that's the case as a junior, I have some sympathy for that.
Wouldn't that amount of money absolutely staggered you for a player of Fashuni's experience?
It's out of order as far as I'm concerned, but...
Does that happen with Justin Madden?
Not sure what's happened with Justin Madden. What I am sure about, however, we can't get to him. and we want Justin to be playing for Essendon as soon as possible.
Someone's been talking to him from another club, eh?
You're saying it, Doug. They're your words, not mine.
Well,
but,
you can't talk to him. And
you haven't tapped
can.
their conversations.
No, not yet.
Greg, have you given permission for other clubs to interview Justin Madden?
Not as far as I know, no.
Well, do you know something, Dave?
No, I was just wondering if permission had been granted.
No, not as far as I know. We want Justin to be playing with us.
Well, when you say you can't get to him, you just can't talk to him.
Well, on odd
Too
occasions...
tall, you can't hear.
Can't reach.
On odd occasions, Don, when we've tried to speak to Justin, he's not available until such time his solicitor and his accountant is available. And they've got fixed ideas, and they're not going to listen to what we've got to say because they believe that they know all about football and they know what he's worth, and what we're offering is nowhere near what he ought to be getting. He's also made other comments that he's not satisfied with around the club, and so we're just not able to get to be able to communicate with him. Hopefully it'll happen in the near future. We're trying desperately, but we won't be able to meet the demands that he's asked, no matter what happens.
You'd certainly have plenty of big man strength with his brother, and also young Salmon. He showed great form on, great promise on Sunday's game.
Tremendous potential, young Salmon, and of course we're very happy with Simon.
Greg, lest anybody should think that all your players are from Demboola and are cheapies, I understand Paul Weston is playing on the weekend.
Yes.
What about his case?
Well, of course, we've had Paul Weston signed now for some 4 years, and we've been trying to get him since those 4 years, and he agreed to come this year. We made an offer to Glenelg, and they wanted some exorbitant amount of money, of which we weren't prepared to pay, and we made the appeal to the NFL, and they made a decision as to what the transfer fee ought to be, or has to be. We were a little disappointed with that also, but we did make a commitment to Paul that if we couldn't negotiate some time payment, etc., well then we guaranteed him that he would be playing with us on the following week. Now, yesterday we drew a cheque for the amount.
How much? Go on.
I'm not sure, I can't remember. On the Glenelg Football Club, but it was certainly a lot less than what they asked, a little more than we offered, and that cheque has been drawn and it's been handed into the NFL. I'm not sure where it is at the moment, but we have a permit and we've done all we can do in accordance with the NFL appeals.
Now, you're not totally innocent with him, are you? Because you played him in practice matches before he had a clearance, and didn't you play him once under a false name?
We played him in practice matches after it was we agreed amongst ourselves that we were prepared to pay the $1,000 fine, and I don't believe we did anything wrong. I don't think we played him under a false name. If we did, I'm not aware of that.
But you wasted a few $1,000.
Go on you, Harry.
Why not? Why not? He's a good player. We want him to be playing, and how can we really get him into form if he doesn't play? Quite frankly, we think the rule of not being able to play a player like that in practice matches ought to be looked at.
It is a risk, though, Greg. If he did happen to be injured and he wasn't finally cleared to you, it'd be a bit hard on the parent club in that case, wouldn't? How would you feel about that?
Well, it's it's a quid pro quo. It would happen to us, and it could happen to another club.
Well, Greg, stay with us and join us while we get on to the previews, and thanks very much for coming in. We might let you have a go when we get round to the Essendon game a little bit later on. But firstly, let's start with the first half of the split round and matches on in Melbourne tomorrow, and there are 3 of them. And we start with the game at Victoria Park, where Tom Hafey's Cats go to Victoria Park, and Hafey back to, his own old home ground at Collingwood. And here to preview the game is Doug Hayward.
Try and talk some sense.
It probably was
Well, that's distinct from the complex.
If it wasn't, I'd like to tell viewers what I think of Tim Lane, but I know something about the laws of libel, so let you to guess on that one. I'm sure that Tom would really have loved to have seen the recruiting go down at Geelong, because when you look at the Geelong side, it's the same old ones, and of course he's only going to hope that certainly he can inspire them, because he is a magnificent coach with a great record, but he's got to hope that some of his tried and trusted and proven performers play better this year. In particular, I guess, Peake, who came across with the reputation of polypharma and up to date hasn't justified it, but showed some good form last week. But again, Geelong are going to need those ruckmen and rovers to kick goals. They don't seem to have been able to get a consistent goal kicker, a key position goal kicker for years, and it was Blake and the new boy from Carlton, Linehan, who saved them last week, but it's always Pockets or Terry Bright. Out at Collingwood, of course, they're delighted with their win, but their win was quite extraordinary because it was some of the battlers like Anir and Tony Shaw and Derek Shaw. 3 miserable games did he get last year only. Came in with Collingwood, their weakest point. Now that Teasdale's out, as he's not, they haven't got any ruckman. Derek Shaw was the last one they expected to succeed. He certainly did. It'll be fascinating to see Derek, there he is now, as to whether, as so many other ruckmen who've played second fiddle have done over the years, when they've got the opportunity to be number 1, they've come in and been a great success. There's never been any doubt about Derek Shaw's ability. It's been his application that's worried Collingwood over the years, and maybe this is his big chance. It certainly is a big chance. Whether he can fulfil it, time alone will tell, and he's really up against some big stuff tomorrow in Rod Blake and John Mossop. John Mossop, a very, very promising player for Geelong, and I think probably a future captain. That's what I think of him down Geelong way. But I think it'll be too big a job, really, for Geelong at Collingwood, at Victoria Park, with those screaming fans believing this is going to be Collingwood's year. And I think it'll be just too much for Geelong, and Collingwood will win.
All Collingwood?
Collingwood for me. Yep.
Collingwood.
Have a go,
Geelong.
Greg. Yeah, I'm
I
with you.
believe Geelong will win.
So do I.
I'm going for Collingwood, but I'm certainly not carried away with last week. I think it's touch and go.
You're still going
All right.
two ways as usual.
Well,
Pick one or
early in the
other.
season,
Pick
I'm still
one or
just
the
feeling
other.
my way a bit.
If you're not carried away about last week, you have the task now to preview the game at the Western Oval between Footscray and your beloved Carlton.
Well, I just feel a bit disappointed that you've given me this match to preview because I think
So are we.
I've proved myself in the last couple of years clearly the top tipster on the panel, and this is no challenge.
Disputable, but we haven't got time.
Also very modest.
Saw Carlton last week, and I've got good news for Blues fans and bad news for everybody else. They're even better this year than they have been in the last couple when they've won the flag. And why I say they're better is that they've got the same lineup of talent, but they're tougher, and I think they've developed that toughness in the latter stages of last season when they really were under challenge again, and especially in the second semi and grand final, they showed that they could handle what Richmond served up to them, and they did it superbly last week. All the skills were evident, plus this brand of toughness that I really liked. And speaking of that, Ken Hunter with his 17 marks was far and away their best player, despite the fact that, surprisingly, he didn't get votes in the top votes in some of the publications around town, which really surprised me.
When you're a champion, you've got to take 28 marks to get a vote.
He just frightens me at times. Some of the things like that mark a moment ago that he did last week put his physical well-being in so much jeopardy that it doesn't matter. He's got so much courage that at times I feel scared that something bad's going to happen to him. And apart from the Hunters and the small men and the usual galaxy of stars, a couple of others bobbed up last week. Mark Buckley was superb. He kicked 6 goals in the second half. Look at that. And Peter McConville, who for a long time has been a bit part player, a very good one. Last week he was a real star, and if he can keep that going, well, he's a great bonus for the Blues. The one change, Perovic coming back. They've still got 4 champions to bring back into the team. Unfortunately, Ditchburn's out injured, so Hunter lines up at full forward, and he'll probably kick a bag. The Dogs, great to see Jim Edmonds setting a good example last week as captain. Good to see them go well for 3 quarters. Beasley back, but they've got a long way to go. And despite the fact that people have been saying for years that Carlton always struggle at the Western Oval, I think they'll win easily tomorrow.
From what I saw of those highlights, I think Hunter will win on his own. Anybody going for Footscray?
No, I'll go for the Blues.
Carlton for me.
Yeah, you've got to go for them, haven't you? Well, the game at the MCG between the co-tenants. Can Melbourne bounce back after 2 defeats in the last week against the Tigers? Don Hyde.
Thanks very much, Drew. Well, the Richmond Tigers and the Melbourne Demons tomorrow at the MCG, both losers, of course, last week. And I guess it's a pity for fans of both sides because both sides a few weeks ago promised so much in season 1983. I guess particularly Melbourne with their strong recruiting program with getting players like Peter Moore and also Kelvin Templeton. Now tomorrow, of course, Templeton is out of the side, which is a blow to the Demons. And not only Templeton, but they've got 4 other changes, including O'Sullivan injured as well. So the Demons are a recast side tomorrow, and I think they will struggle against the Tigers. What of Richmond? I thought last week for the first half they were pretty good against the Blues. They were okay, but of course Carlton played so well, they overwhelmed them in the second half, and I think Carlton would have beaten any side the same way last week. Richmond last week were very poor across the half-forward line. Tomorrow they will do better there with Jimmy Jess, who's a very strong mark, and he'll give them aggression and strength on the half-forward line, and he'll give great support to Brian Taylor in the full-forward position. Taylor, of course, is playing superb football. He's an incredibly strong young man, very hard to move. He's got that nice touch of aggression that I think all good full forwards should have. He's a tremendously good mark, and when one considers that Brian Taylor has only played 22 games with Richmond and averaged something like 4 goals a game, he's obviously got a tremendous future with the Tigers. He'll be the focal point, and he'll kick goals again tomorrow. I think that the Richmond side will get good strength tomorrow from their running players who were down a little last week, and I talk of Rioli and Waitman and Rawlings and others, and I think taking that into account, they're good running players, Taylor at full forward, I think the Tigers can win and win pretty well.
Richmond?
Melbourne, I thought Richmond were pathetic last week. Carlton were excellent, but while they were only 8 points down at half-time, Don, I thought Richmond struggled all day, and I think they're going to have to do a lot better.
Well, I think you're wrong there. You're very one-eyed Carlton. I think they did well for the first half, and all you could see was Carlton for 4 quarters.
They should have been about 6 goals in front at half-time, but they were just on the bit.
David?
I'm going for Richmond. I think, well, I saw Melbourne train on Thursday night, and I was none too impressed with their training form, even though they'll probably still